Welcome back to My Child and Autism online module. In this video, we're going to look at our learning styles and the key strategies for supporting people with different learning styles. We know that people learn in different ways, so we'll explore the learning styles which can be preferred by people on the spectrum. We'll look at the ways you can interact with your child to maximise their strengths and their ability to learn. So if you're trying to learn something new, what do? For me, I need to read about it and then have a go at doing it myself. What do? Do you ask questions of people? Do you watch a video or someone else do something? Or do you just have a go at it? Children with autism may have particular styles of learning. These can be a benefit to them, but they can also pose challenges for them. You might notice some of these ways of learning that I'm going to talk about now within your own child. Some children have a preferred information processing style. For many children on the spectrum, that style is visual. Show me and I learn is often a common catchphrase around children on the spectrum. Many autistic children can be quite detailed focused in their learning. For example, pick all of the red dinosaurs out of the box, or when you're taking them for a walk, only find the number 3s on the letterboxes. That black and white thinking can mean that they have a very fixed idea of the finished product. So if their drawing doesn't look exactly the same as their brother or sisters, then it's all wrong and has to go in the bin. If the sandwich is cut into squares rather than triangles, they don't want to eat it because it doesn't look like a sandwich anymore. When they're learning to ride a bike, for example, or use the toilet, they might want to be able to do that whole activity right from the start. They don't see all the little steps of learning that it's going to take to actually get that big result of being able to ride a bike. They just want to be able to get on the bike and do it like their big sister or brother can. Many children also have what is called central coherence. So they will go into a room, for example, a family gathering, and they might just see the table of food or the PlayStation in the corner, but they don't see the other people in the room that they need to greet. Many children on the autism spectrum will also show differences in a skill called executive functioning, which is about organisation, really. It's about problem solving. It's about organising and sequencing, planning for how all the details fit together. Often children on the spectrum need a lot more prompts in their life to be able to manage these things. So don't be too surprised when your child comes home without their lunchbox or their jumpers down the bottom of the garden in the rain, because all of that sequencing is really difficult for a child on the spectrum. Many children on the spectrum also have a variable memory. They have a strong memory for their interests. They remember the place, but not necessarily what they did there. And their long-term memory is much better than their working short-term memory. Many children on the spectrum also display a reduced attention for some things. Often this is because they're just not motivated or not interested in those things. Or a child might focus on details that others see as irrelevant. For example, that there's a vent in the ceiling, or that the colour of the pencil is not exactly the colour that they were thinking of. So many children on the spectrum can find it hard to generalise information and generalise different skills across different situations. For example, brushing their teeth at home is fine, but if they're asked to brush their teeth at grandma's house, then that's a very different situation and they don't necessarily want to do that. Many children also need a lot more thinking time and processing time, especially for words by themselves. That's why it's really handy for children on the spectrum to give them some kind of visual clue or cue as to what you are talking about. It can take a child up to 10 seconds sometimes to process information.
Janie's really good with pictures and maps. She knows where to find her favourite places on a map. And she helps Mum make a shopping list by finding pictures of the food she wants in the catalogues. Her eye for detail and focus is amazing. She can remember the exact markings on a caterpillar she finds, whereas Macy can only remember what colour it was. Her focus in this area confuses her parents. How can she see those tiny details on a caterpillar, but can't see the dirty clothes on her bedroom floor? No 2 days are the same for Janie. Some days she seems to be doing really well with getting dressed and brushing her teeth. Other days, Mum and Dad have to do it all for her.
In this part of the planning booklet, we're going to look at your child's learning styles. As human beings, we all have different learning styles. Children on the autism spectrum have a particular learning style, often around their visual learning. If we think about Janie understands visual information much better than she understands verbal information. So if her parents need to give her verbal information, they will probably try to give her some kind of visual along with that to help with her understanding. Another part of Janie's learning style is that she can notice lots of details but not be able to see the bigger picture. So for example, she might be really interested in a particular caterpillar and the markings on that caterpillar, but she might not see that there's another few caterpillars around there, or that the wind is starting to blow the leaves and where has the caterpillar gone? Janie has a really good long-term memory. She might remember which park has a particular slide that she likes, but she might not be able to remember where the cereal is in the cupboard or what she had for breakfast. So Janie also will have problems with her working memory. So day-to-day tasks are quite tricky because she also has difficulties with organisation and remembering from one day to the next what needs to happen first, what needs to happen next, and where things are kept, for example. Janie is also quite inconsistent sometimes with skills or tasks. So something that she might be able to do one day when she's feeling calm and focused, she might not be able to do the next day when she might be a bit tired. So take a look through these different characteristics that there are here for learning styles and see which ones you think fit with your child and how you understand their learning style to work. If there's anything that's not listed there, you can put that into the section at the bottom. So having looked at the characteristics of your child's learning style, we're now going to take a look at the impact of your child's learning style, both for your child and for your family. In Janie's case, Janie can remember lots of things that sometimes her family forget. So that's a real positive impact for her family. She might remember, for example, where Macy's left her jumper hanging on the back fence. Macy might not remember that. But with Janie too, it can be hard to get her to stop an activity that she's really enjoying. So she might be out jumping, or she might be looking at her caterpillar books, and she really doesn't want to get a move on and do the things that the rest of the family need her to do. Similarly with Janie, it can be sometimes hard to get her to do the things that she doesn't really want to do, like brushing her teeth. Janie can be very disorganised, and that can impact on the family in a big way, because sometimes things just have to be done by a certain time and in a certain way to get them done. So there are lots of strategies that we'll talk about later that will help Janie with that as well. So take a look at the list and see if you can identify some parts there that relate to your child's learning style. Just remember that there's an other section at the bottom with what you know about your child's learning style that's not listed, you can add there. So having thought about your child's characteristics around their learning style and the impacts of their learning style on both your child and your family, we're now going to take a look at some strategies. So you'll see here that there's a list of strategies, some that you might have tried and some that you might want to try in the future. With Janie, some of the strategies that have been utilised with her are using visual reminders to go with any verbal information that is given to her. This helps clarify for Janie and provides her with a focus. Another strategy that works really well with Janie is giving her one instruction at a time. Because if you give her two instructions, she might only follow the second part or she might only follow the first part. And in the process of following them, she can get quite upset and disoriented as well. One strategy that her parents might like to try with Janie is, for example, using a visual timer so that she knows when it's time to get off the trampoline or when it's time to close those caterpillar books and maybe go and brush her teeth. As with the other parts of the planning booklet, there's also a section of other at the end. So if you have other strategies that are working really well with your child at this time, this is where you can put them down. Now that we've thought about your child's learning style, we're going to think about who can best support your child with the learning style that you know that they have to go on and develop. In Janie's case, she has her parents, her extended family, and her educators at preschool, childcare, and gymnastics to help her with her learning. It's really important that everyone who's involved with your child is on the same page, that they're sharing the same strategies so that this is a consistent approach for your child. One way of sharing these strategies is to share this planning booklet with all the other people who are supporting your child and your family. And that way, there will be consistency going forward for your child's development. In this section, we're going to look at helping your child to successfully engage and learn. Being able to focus and engage is the key to learning. It's really important that our sensory world is in order for all of us to be able to learn. For many children on the autism spectrum, they have a lot of sensory needs, so it's important that we get those sensory needs in order for them before we're expecting them to sit and focus and engage with the learning materials that we're providing for them. Another technique is to respond to and join in with your child where they're at. So if your child loves jumping or they love water play, join in with them so that they can see that you are interested in what they're doing and that what they're doing really matters to you as well. You can also use their interests to teach them. For example, if they love dinosaurs, teach them to count using dinosaurs. If they are not interested in holding a pencil, then teach them to write the letters of their name in shaving cream or in sand. It's also really important to have reasonable expectations of your child, and that way we set them up for success. It might take lots and lots of practice for your child to learn a new skill, and they also may learn better if we break it down into smaller portions. So for example, they might eat 5 mouthfuls of their dinner rather than being presented with a whole big bowl full. If we can break tasks down into steps, that also makes it so much easier for our child to learn a new task. For example, putting on a t-shirt. Do we teach them to put their head through first or put their arms through first? Once we teach them that sequence, they'll be able to follow that. Because remember, they're not that good at executive functioning. It's also really important to create a safe and calm environment for your child to learn. If it's a really noisy environment, for example, they might not be able to focus on the learning. Or if there's a lot of people rushing by them, they might not be able to focus on what they're meant to learn. So it's important to understand what safe and calm means for your child. You can also help your child engage and focus by providing motivation. For example, there's a great strategy called first and then. So when you're using that strategy, the first thing is always the thing that your child doesn't want to do so much. And the then is the follow-up of something they will really enjoy. So for example, first clean your teeth and then we'll have a story. Often when we're trying to get our children to focus and engage, it's important to have some element for your child where they still feel like they're in control. A great strategy around that is called limited choice. So for example, you might say to your child, would you like this drink bottle or this drink bottle? Would you like sausages or vegetables for dinner? So they feel like they have some control over their environment. Another important area of engagement is to validate your child's response. Often your child's response might come from their sensory processing, and it might not make a lot of sense to you, but it's really important to validate their response to a certain situation. So if your child is in a crowded situation and they're not coping with that situation, your response is to understand what's happening for them and not to tell them to ignore the situation and just keep going. We're now going to look at some of the key strategies in supporting your child and some of the resources that are available. The first thing we're going to talk about is consistency. Consistency for your child is really important. It makes sure that they don't have so many things to think about every day. So if we can provide them with routines and structure, then they're able to get on with focusing without having to redo that every day. So some example of routines are, for example, this getting ready routine you might use at the start of the day, where the child can see from that they get dressed, they have breakfast, they clean their teeth, brush their hair, and get their bag ready before the TV goes on. Another example of a great routine, which they might use at childcare, is that the child needs to have sunscreen and a hat before they can go out to play. That really clear visual just helps your child follow the structure and also means they don't have to keep it in their head. Another great strategy is a social narrative. So this is an example of a social narrative. Sometimes I need some quiet time. I can tell an adult I need quiet time. I can go to my tent for quiet time. I can listen to my music in my tent. I can just lie down and rest in my tent. When I'm ready, I can go and join in with the class. Having a social narrative like this provides your child with some independent skills, some choices they can make for themselves around their own regulation, and it gives them a consistent routine that they can follow each time they're feeling dysregulated. All of these different visual supports help your child with consistency across different environments and with different people. So visual supports can help a lot with consistency for a child, but visual supports can be used in so many other ways. Visual supports help the child to understand anything that's happening in their day. So one example of a visual support is a wait card. So if your child has difficulty waiting, just holding the wait card can remind them that that's what they're doing, and they'll be quite happy to wait for their turn. Or wait at the doctor's, for example. Another visual cue card is a stop card. You can use this when your child needs to stop what they're doing at that moment, but you can also use this to put on the front door so that they don't go running out without an adult. Another example of a visual support is a choose board. So on this particular choose board, the child can choose from having milk or water from their water bottle. Another example of a visual support is the first and then card, which we talked about before, but this is representing it in a visual form. In this one, it's first have a bath and then you can use your iPad. So visual supports come in all sorts of forms. It's just really important that your child understands what the visual means, and then that helps them to understand what's going on around them. It helps make their world predictable, and it just helps them get through their day in a consistent way and helps them become more independent. So as you can see, visual supports come in all sorts of different forms. The main point about the visual supports is that your child understands them. And then the visual support complements the words that you're using with your child, because the words have gone pretty quickly. But by seeing the visual support, your child can understand what those words mean and what they might need to do next, or what else is happening in the world around them. Visual timers can also be a really handy thing to have with your child as well. Your child can see how much time there is for doing something, for example, for having breakfast. It also leads to them having more independence around a particular situation, and it leads to a predictability for them of when something is going to end. Addressing sensory needs is really important for your child's focus and engagement. So you can provide those sorts of strategies for your child in a couple of different ways. Some of the things that I have here, you're able to add to your child's day. So for example, here is a weighted item, which a child can have across their lap if they're sitting in a group or they're sitting for dinner, for example. That might really help them focus and engage. Other children might like a chewy item, like this one I have here, to help them focus and engage. Other children are really tactile and like something like this little friend that I have here, or something like that to help them focus and engage. Sometimes there are items that you need to add for your child so that they can avoid certain things. For example, noise dampening headphones can be a great thing for a child so that they are able to go into the supermarket with you, for example. Often there are things within the environment that we as the adults can adjust for our children as well. If we know that they are seeking certain things from the environment, we can add that in. For example, it might be music that we add in, or a particular fragrance that they enjoy to keep them calm. Sometimes there might be things that we can take away from the environment as well. So if they don't like the sound of the hand dryer, take that away from the environment or keep them out of that environment. And just remember that an occupational therapist will be able to give you lots of advice and support and strategies in this area. So that brings us to the end of key strategies. I'll see you in the next video where we explore all the services and supports that are available.